Okay, the features of living organisms. The major features of what we consider to be life. This is what we're talking about now. Well, first of all, we know that living organisms are organized from units that are called cells, and each cell is a chamber of living material. The next feature is that living organisms have a chemical composition, a structure, and a function, all of which is very complex and highly organized. In other words, the levels of organization that we have been discussing, starting from quarks and moving all the way through the chemical, the biological, and ecological levels. The third feature of living organisms is that they can capture and use energy either directly or indirectly for their metabolism. Okay, so living organisms, we said, are made up of cells. Okay, that's the first feature. There's levels of organization. Okay, we've gone through this. Okay, they capture and utilize energy, okay, for their metabolism. Also, with the energy, it's used to build new structures, repair old structures, and also to reproduce. Another feature of living organisms is that they are irritable, or irritability. Okay, in other words, they can sense changes in the environment, that is, stimuli, and respond to them. Okay, like for example, running away from something, or plants bending towards the light. Okay, this is going to be irritability. Okay, another example, irritability, okay, or quickly response, plants bending towards the light. Another feature of living organisms is that they are able to reproduce, grow, and develop. Okay, so reproduction, growth, and development. Okay, here we see development. And we start over here. Okay, when the sperm meets the egg, and then the first division, and eventually you form the opening and so forth. Okay. Okay, and reproduction, sexual reproduction in humans, of course. Okay, asexual reproduction in other organisms, or for repairing and growth, it's going to be by a process very similar to mitosis. Living organisms also have genetic information, okay, which is contained in the chromosomes and in the genes, and this specifies an organism's features and gets passed on to the offspring. So here we can see what the DNA looks like, okay, and here it's replicating itself, but in any event, here we see the chromosome, and certain regions along the chromosome are going to represent the genes, okay, so for example, maybe from here to here represents a gene, okay, and then picture is kind of hard to figure. Actually, it looks like there's two genes in this area, okay, but anyway. And living organisms evolve and adapt, okay, that is, they evolve and they adapt to their environment. The organisms can change through successive generations by natural selection. The genes that express favorable traits for the organism in its environment will survive. Remember, the Earth was sort of, we can say, born about 4 billion years ago, and over that time period, organisms have changed, producing a tremendous variety of species. In fact, we can predict the type of environment that organisms live in by examining the fossil records. Anyway, all of these characteristics define life, okay? All of these characteristics define life. This is just showing you evolution. So just to quickly recap, when we talk about the features of living organisms, they're made up of cells, they are highly organized, they utilize energy for their metabolic processes. The energy is used to build new structures, repair old ones, reproduce. Okay, organisms are irritable. They respond to stimuli. Okay, those are some examples. They reproduce, they grow, and they develop. Okay, and they have genetic information about their traits encoded in the DNA, and organisms evolve and adapt. And this is an example of adaptation. Okay, humans will sweat, dogs will pant. Okay, we want to look at the cell players. Who were the people that were involved in cells? Well, in the early 17th century, Galileo, what he did was he arranged two glass lenses in a cylinder. And even though he wasn't a biologist, he started to make observations through his simple microscope. Okay, this is the microscope that Galileo made. Next came Robert Hooke, okay, and this is in England now, mid-17th century, and he used his scope to observe a thin piece of cork from, of course, the bark of a tree, and he saw little small compartments, okay, and these compartments were lined with walls, but these cells were dead. What he was actually observing then were the plant tissues, okay, he's looking at plant cells, these walled structures, and later on they discovered that inside of the plant tissues, these cells had juices, which today we know are the cytoplasm. In the late 1600s, okay, a Dutchman by the name of Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, okay, greatly improved the earlier microscopes and started observing what he called many very small animalcules, little animals, okay, animalcules. And these were moving. Actually, what he was looking at were some protozoan and bacteria and also sperm. So he was the first to observe living organisms. Next comes Robert Brown in the 1820s, and he had even a better lens system, and he was able to sharpen the focus in his microscope, and he observed that there were dark spots in cells, which, of course, today we know he was observing the nuclei. Okay, this is the view Brown obtained in 1828 when he first recognized the cell nucleus. It shows about 20 orchid epidermal cells, and the nucleus can be clearly seen within each cell. And you can see the nuclei here and here and here, and so forth. And also, there's 3 stomata can be seen. Okay, these are the breathing pores that plants use to exchange gases with the atmosphere. Okay, so he was looking at the epidermal cells of some orchids, and plant cells have these openings for gas exchange, but clearly he was able to observe the nucleus. Then comes Schwann in 1839, and he said that animals, which lack a cell wall, as well as plants, are made up of cells, okay? And that these cells have an individual life of their own, even though they're part of a whole organism. Okay, so Schwann makes this claim that animals as well as plants are made up of cells, and cells have an individual life of their own. Next comes Virchow in 1849, and he studied cell growth and reproduction. He studied cells dividing into 2 cells, and he concluded then that every cell comes from an already existing cell. So at this point in time, you have the idea that the cell is the smallest unit of life, and that life continues because the cells will grow and divide, okay?